and night. Jason got the spotlight, keeping it tight. Reptile keepers rise, making impact. Breeding them beauties, never looking back. Getting back.
Right, hey, how's everybody doing today? This is a new show. This is called Putting In That Work. It's dedicated to reptile hobbyists and professionals that have been, making a positive impact on the hobby. And today, we have Mr. Justin on. Like, this person, I've been noticing so much. The work he's been doing with all these crazy rare reptiles that doesn't have a lot of information. He's helping putting that info out for people to, maybe just take that step to try to work with that animal. And so that's why I wanted him to be like my first guest on this show, because I appreciate the work that he does on this stuff. Justin, man, how you doing today, dude?
I'm good. Just dealing with some weather up here anyway. When you message me, I'm in the Northeast, so we just got like 3 inches of snow and ice, and it's pouring.
Holy shit.
So it's trying to get the driveway done before it gets any worse. Get in here to get ready for this. So
man, damn. Yeah, no, sorry. It's gonna be in the 80s this week over here in Arizona.
I heard
my winter was so short. Like, literally it was a month. That was it.
Yeah. He told my old man lives down there. I told you in Cave Creek area. So he told me he's 87. He's like, yep, we got another foot of sunshine today. I'm like, okay. I'm tired of wintering up here right now.
Yeah, man. Like, it messed up my cooling period so much, though. Like, I don't know how the reptiles are going to do this breeding season, but like, we'll see. Like, everything's paired up that needs to be paired up. We'll see what happens. Like I said, it was a short cool, so I don't know if they fully did everything they needed to do to get the breeding triggered. So we'll see what happens.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed for you.
Right. So before we kind of get started, I wanted to ask you, what's the story behind Legacy Herbs?
I kind of just came up with it on a whim, to be honest. Sitting at the auction Saturday night at Tinley, and I was trying to create an Instagram profile, right? Because I was never on Instagram, and I used to have the name Higher Ground Herps because I worked with a lot of cloud forest species, stuff like that, high elevation species. So, but I never really loved it. It's just something I used to sell on Fauna Classifieds. It was an older like name and stuff that I went by. So, it was just, I wasn't on Instagram. Someone was helping me set up an Instagram account, and they said, what do you want your Instagram username to be? And I don't know. I thought about it for like 3 minutes, and that's what I came up with. And I like it. I think it has meaning other than just, something I came up with. Like, a lot of the species that I work with, they're very rare in captivity, rarely ever captive bred. So it's not necessarily about my legacy, but their legacy. You know what I mean? Them living on and trying to point a spotlight on these species that are overlooked all the time or underrepresented in the hobby and stuff like that. So I think that's, also maybe it's, part of my legacy. You know what I mean? That's for me and them. So I think it's kind of dual purpose.
Yeah, it goes hand in hand.
It's what I came up with. Everybody else seems to like it, so I couldn't think of anything better.
Definitely, I love the name.
Thank you.
It's a dope name, man.
Thank you.
So, yes, we're here to talk about like some newly stuff that you like recently started getting into. Well, not getting into, but putting in that work for it. Is those Amazon Dwarf iguanas. Now, how do you say the Latin on that?
Annuloides laticeps.
God,
it's a mouthful. That first name's definitely a mouthful. I've heard it pronounced a few different ways, but mostly I think Annuloides laticeps.
Okay, yeah. So how did you get into these?
Kind of by accident, actually. It was funny. I was doing a trade with Armin from Herp Time. I was getting some Lophosaurus dilophus from him, and that was the main part of the trade that I was trying to get that we were doing. And then the stuff I was giving him was a little bit more valuable than just the Lophosaurus alone. So he had asked me, he said, well, I've got these Annuloides here. He had just gotten them in not long, a few weeks before. He goes, would you want to take, a 2.1 of those to make up the difference? I said, I don't know, man. I was like, they're, Amazon, they probably got to be kept hot and everything like that. probably not going to fit into the stuff that I'm doing. And he said to me, he's like, well, I'm keeping them at 72 degrees and, at the bottom of the enclosure, and it's 74 at the top, and they're doing great. I said, all right, well, in that case, let me try them out. Let me see. So he ended up sending them to me, and I got some, and another friend of mine who's been a big part of this project too, this guy, Cody Bryan, not really a social media guy, so most people don't know him. But anyway, we both got groups of them right around the same time. And neither one of us liked them at first. Thought they were the most boring things. I almost got rid of them. He almost got rid of them. I actually did sell the first pair that I got from Armin. Unfortunately, the male out of the 2.1 was in rough shape, so he didn't make it. He was really rough when he came in. But the pair, they did well enough. They took a long time to establish. But once they were established, I ended up moving them along and had some more offered to me again from Armin. Before I had moved out the original pair, I had gotten a couple more pairs because I started to like them once they started to do well, and we kind of figured them out a little bit more on what they need, what they like, things like that. But it was a learning curve for sure because there's really very, very little information, known on that species. You could look at Wikipedia. Wikipedia has a little bit of info. As far as anything else, that's it. Kind of gave you some of the general type of habitat and stuff like that, but it's really not specific enough because, I know we've talked on the Gecko Exchange and stuff, how I know you do the same thing, look at iNaturalist. If you click on the photo, you can find out where the location of that photo was taken. So doing research on the areas where they actually come from, the temperatures are way hotter than what they prefer. You know what I mean? Like Loreto, Peru, is a locality where they're found, right? But so I monitor that location on my weather app, and it'll get up to 95, 98, almost 100 during the summertime. They're kind of not really on the same season, but they're kind of on the same seasons as us, closer than some of the other species and stuff like that from Indo. But anyway, I think those things would drop dead at 95 degrees, to be honest. They prefer very cool in the mid to low 70s. Okay. That's where they tend to like to hang out.
Essentially, it does work with what you need.
Yeah,
what you have.
Yeah, it actually way better than I thought because they prefer it much, much cooler. Even though it's hot in those areas, they're coming from a very closed canopy part of the forest, and they rarely ever. But I do offer them basking spots sometimes, like over the winter now. I have never seen them use a basking spot ever. They avoid anything over about 80 degrees, really. So, I have a basking spot on some of the babies that I'm raising up right now, and it's about 84 underneath the basking spot. And I really just didn't know how cold tolerant they would be during the winter. And I do have them in my basement, so it tends to get, a lot cooler down there than it would in the tropical room upstairs. So I did put a basking spot on them, but again, I've never seen them use it. They've never gone directly under it. They might be, 6 or 7 inches off to the side, and usually I'll temp that area, and it's maybe like 78 at the highest where they're ever exposing themselves to. But yeah, so they fit in well, and I don't know. I mean, once you figure something out like that, it's intriguing. And honestly, these are probably one of the most intriguing species that I've ever worked with. Definitely the most difficult to have figured out and to have successfully bred and hatched. They were one of the most challenging projects that I've ever attempted. So
and you were these were wild caught, right? The first ones that you got.
Caught.
Okay,
yes.
So what was your quarantine setup compared to a regular setup? Did you change anything, or was it all right, we're just gonna kind of have this kind of streamline, and then once we get past the 90 days, we just kind of move them into the bigger collection area?
Yeah. So the quarantine setup, I went through a few different phases with it. So pretty early on, and that's when my original pair started making a turnaround. They seem to have a strong relationship to streams and little rivulets and stuff like that. So running water makes a difference, especially for, fresh wild caughts and everything like that. Running water triggers a bit more of their natural behaviors, it seems. You know what I mean? At first they were just hiding 24/7, would never come out. I couldn't get them to eat for months. So I was worried. The female that came to me, she ended up losing weight pretty quickly. The male maintained it, a little bit better, but the female was losing weight. And I had, again, I mentioned my friend Cody Bryan. So he told me that he started putting some little, I think ReptiZoo makes them, but we were getting this like a knockoff brand, Way Cool, off of Amazon. And it's just like a little fountain, like a self-contained fountain thing.
Yeah,
It was something that was you could easily remove it, clean it, sterilize it, because obviously that's very important when you've got wild caught, stuff that they're maybe these guys like to get inside it. And the one thing is they'll
like to defecate in that water.
They'll defecate in it immediately, almost every time.
Oh man!
So you got to be able to have something that you can easily bring out and clean. So I didn't go with that originally. What I did was I took like a Ziploc container, maybe about 12 inches long, 8 inches wide, something like that. I had sunk one of them down into the soil, so it was flush with the top of the soil. And then I had taken a second one and put it in as like an insert to the first, and just ran a air stone into that and kind of piled some rocks over top of the air stone to give it the look of moving water. And that worked. That was enough. The moving water helped with them. I would see them soaking it constantly, and then the female started coming around where she was a little bit more bold, would start eating, everything like that. So running water definitely makes a difference with them for establishing them. The captive bred ones, however, seem to be completely different. They don't need it. And once they're well established, it seems that you don't need to provide the running water, but you need to provide a water bowl, like a big water basin, big enough for them to get in and soak, because they do like to do that. But they do recognize the standing water, and they will go in there and soak. And they're like any other tropical, but they're not really arboreal. They're semi-arboreal, semi-terrestrial. So, but you'll spray them just like you would any other arboreal agamids. So I mist them down, and usually as soon as I start misting them, they'll start drinking and everything like that. The one thing that we learned pretty quickly, as we were saying, like the 90-day quarantine and moving it into a new enclosure, the wild caught ones do not adapt to change very well. It's the weirdest thing in the world. You can literally just move the placement of a couple branches inside the enclosure, and it throws them all off like they're in a brand new environment.
Damn.
one of the most recent wild caught ones that I got, she's been in quarantine setup now for I don't know, 5 months, 6 months, something like that. I mean, it's a nice setup. It's sufficient for her and everything like that. But really, when you move stuff, I cleaned her enclosure out just last week, and she's been in the very far back corner of the enclosure now, just hiding, won't come out, won't eat, anything like that. Everything got put back in almost identical, with the exception that I could not place. There was a couple branches that I couldn't figure out how I got them in there the first time the way they were.
Yeah.
So they're just at a couple different angles, or, a little bit different placement, and it's thrown her all off. So, luckily though, the captive bred ones do not seem to, the captive bred ones, you can literally raise them in a critter keeper. My buddy actually kind of tried that just to test out the hardiness on them, and some recent hatchlings that he had, he put them in critter keepers, and he said that those ones actually grew faster and better than the ones that he had in a planted viv. So interesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's probably like opportunity they see their food much more easier. So understand that. Well, okay. Yeah. So how long are you putting them through quarantine?
Usually, I mean, like 3 months is pretty good, but like I said, it takes them a long time. If they're coming in wild caught, if you're buying wild caught, it does take them a long time to settle in. So it's going to take them 3 months just to settle in before they're even, really doing anything that they should be doing. So some of them I've kept in quarantine for like 6+ months, because not that they're doing everything at that point that they need to. I'm pretty sure they're, cleaned out. As long as there's no visible health issues or anything like that, I don't treat. We've talked about this before. I don't treat stuff for parasites all the time. You know what I mean? If the animal obviously has an ailment that it's suffering from, I'll do that. But if it's, eating, gaining weight, staying hydrated, you just got to make sure you clean out the fecal matter when you find it. And the one benefit to those guys is they're very much like a Shinosaurus. They're very the thing that I could relate them to the most as far as behaviorally is like a Chinese crocodile lizard. They sit, they don't really move around a lot. They can go long, lengthy periods without like food or even water when they've gone into hiding and stuff like that. I mean, it could be, a week or two before they come out. They don't even really look that crappy. It's almost like they can shut off their metabolism very much like a Chinese crocodile lizard. That's something because they go through periods of 6 months, hibernation and stuff, and you can pull them out of hibernation and they haven't lost an ounce of weight. So these guys are somewhat similar in that aspect, but like I said, it does take them a long time to settle in. So I'll typically leave them in quarantine, until I know they're solid. Like I've got them tongue feeding. They seem to have lost that fear of me. My oldest pair that I have going, it's probably been at least 1.5 to 2 years that I've had them now. And those guys are like captive bred animals at this point. You know what I mean? They eat with vigor off tongues. They're not much for crickets, that species. They don't really chase down a cricket or go after a cricket. They like a lot of grubs, worms, stuff like that. Earthworms, swarmworms, silkworms, superworms, dubia roaches. So, I mean, I tongue feed them mostly, or put stuff in like a bowl and leave it down on the ground, and then they'll go find whatever it is. But yeah, every time I release crickets in there, they just end up hanging out in there for a few, weeks before they die off.
God damn. I hate that.
Yeah. Yep.
I got chewies right now. Yeah, I got chewies right now. Like, they're like, I don't want these crickets right now. And then there's just crickets all over. I had one literally yesterday, just had a cricket on top of his head, just chilling. I'm like, dude, are you going to get this cricket? Please, just get it. And he just didn't even feel like he was bothered by it. I was like, it's bothering me. I got to yank that thing off because I was like, I don't need no accidents right now. But
yeah.
So you said that. So they're from the Amazon. What parts are they from? You said like a locality like in Peru and stuff like that. So where all in those countries are they found?
Yeah, so they're found throughout parts of Peru, basically the Amazon basin, I believe. Peru, Ecuador, some of the surrounding area. They're pretty widespread. Laticeps is one of the most widespread species throughout that area, but a lot of the Amazon rainforest, mostly Peru. I want to say like southwestern Peru or something like that. Ecuador. I know I'm not great with South American countries because they're the only thing from South America that I work with. But I don't want to say Colombia because I'm not sure. But I think Colombia too. I think that's in that general region. Yeah. Peru and Ecuador. So, they're found, I think, throughout almost all of Ecuador and most of Peru.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to... it gives people an idea of where to kind of look for, like, especially if you go to iNaturalist or you pull up the weather apps and see stuff like that. Because I know we've had this conversation before about, like, when people say, like, hey, you keep it room temp. I was like, what's room temp? Because that's, like, subject to variability. And that's one of the terms in the hobby I do not like is, just keep it room temp. Well, your room temp could be different from my room temp. Like, my buddy's room temp could be 80 degrees. Mine can be, like, 63 or some shit. Right. So it was like, I like data. I'd rather get like, even with that data, there's still variability. Like you said, it's like 90 something in Peru, right? But they're covered so much, there could be a 15-degree difference. Where it's like, like 80 degrees, 75, 78. But it's just about, just taking that information and, processing it and trying to figure out what they really need. Well, actually, how frequently are these imported in?
Not much, honestly. I think about 2 years ago was the first time they ever came on the scene.
Okay, so this is real new in the hobby.
Yeah, they're not something that's regularly exported out of Peru. I guess they just got the collection permits for them, and there was very small groups of them that came in. Maybe twice the first year, and I think maybe twice last year. But yeah, they're very small numbers, like maybe a dozen animals, if that. So they're like I said, it's a very common species where their native range is. They're all throughout their range. They're found frequently. Almost every person that goes down to Peru for a herping trip has seen one of these in the rainforest. I mean, I've got a couple friends that have gone down to Peru since I've been keeping them and have found them, with their first day there. It's a pretty common species in the forest there. And I've asked them, it's nice to have someone who's got boots on the ground in the areas that they're being found, because I asked them to, collect some data for us and stuff like that. Where did you find it? what was the temperature where it was sitting, were there streams around, how close to proximity to the streams was it, stuff like that. So that was pretty good. That's definitely valuable information.
Yeah.
Most recently, I think over the summer, Corey Martin from Corey Martin Reptiles, she was down there in Peru, and she found one, sent pictures of it to Cody and myself and everything. And we asked her to take some temps, and it was sitting on a log, believe it or not, a little bit warmer than I expected. It was, I think, where she temped it said about 85, but I think it was in the sun. They don't seem to, in captivity at least, they don't seem to like that. Like I said, it's yeah, I think that's a really rare opportunity that they take. She said it was pouring earlier that day though, so it might have just been trying to get its body temperature up quick to operating temps.
Yeah,
and then it probably
just
would have
thermoregulating and then then dip out.
Exactly.
I've had this conversation with Savannah before about even like she gives her abronia, she gives them a little heat spot. And they're a cloud forest. She's like, they still need to thermoregulate. They can't just be a cold animal all year round. So they got to warm up. They got to warm, dip out, go back and hide, and whatever they go and do. Which, I mean, makes sense.
Yeah,
that's why for some of these species that I'm getting, I'm going to give them a little basket spot. I'll just put it on a dimmer, just put it real low, just enough for them to regulate their body heat real quick, and then they can go and dip out, go about their day. Because like I said, I'm getting some phylors in the next month or so.
Nice.
Yeah. Actually, I was supposed to get some other stuff too, but I'm actually going to send them to a buddy of mine. Some other Aussie leaf tails. I'm gonna send it to him because he has this big old thing going on where. So I was like, "You need some males?" He's like, "Yeah, cool." So I'm gonna send them over to him, and then we'll just split clutches, and then it'll help me out because I don't like where I'm at right now. I can't really have all those cool climate stuff right now until I actually we actually get our own place, and then because I'm looking for what we're looking for is a place either like a basement, which is very rare in Arizona, or a detached guest house where I can regulate that and not have it affect everybody in the house. So once that happens, then I can go ahead and start playing with some cloud forest stuff. So like in the wild, where you said they're like semi-arboreal. So when you're setting your enclosures up, what kind of how are you setting stuff up vertically or horizontally, some slants and stuff like that? What do you
a little bit of both.
I
mean, a little bit of both. I'm still basically setting it up not like I would set up like my Lophosaurus dilophus or the Boyd eye or anything like that. But you can still put straight up and down vertical branches. They will use those. They will sleep. They usually stay low vegetation or even on the ground during the day, but they will always sleep up in the branches for safety, right? So I've seen them use subterranean burrows for sleeping on occasion as well. So what I do for that to give them that option as well is just take some bigger cork rounds for the adults. I mean, I'm using like something 6-7 inches in diameter at least. And I'm like kind of diagonally sinking it down into the soil so they've got something where they can crawl 12-18 inches down under the the substrate within that tube, you know what I mean, to use that as like a burrow basically. But the first time I got eggs from my female, that's where she decided to lay. There was a big cork tube that I had at like a 45-degree angle going down to the substrate. I filled the back end of it with a bunch of dirt and everything like that, and that's where she chose to lay her eggs. So that was cool. But yeah, so
did you tempt that area? And
what's that?
Did you tempt that area where she laid her eggs and see what it was?
72 degrees.
72? Okay.
72,
nice.
yeah.
Right.
I'll get into that if you remind me, because that was pretty interesting. There's I could go down that road now, but let me finish answering your other question. So so like I said, they do tend to stick lower to the ground during the day, and then they'll sleep up in the branches at night. But they kind of just do what they want as far as it's not like you won't see them in the branches during the day as well. So you just have to give them options, you know what I mean? But they're not high canopy animals by any means. They're maybe 2-3 meters off the ground at most. So 6-10 feet, something like that. In the wild, that's most everyone that I've heard of finding them out in the wild has found them at like eye level. You know what I mean? For So you're looking at like maybe 5-6 feet off the ground. But yeah,
Mhm.
it's almost every night, especially even the offspring, they'll find like a leaf that they can perch on. You know what I mean? Like they'll get on. They call them those money plants, right? You
Yeah.
know what I'm? It's
I
got
think I know what you're
usually you
talking
find
about.
them with those twisted up root bases and everything like that. So that
Yeah.
plant is actually native to Peru. That is they're
Okay.
called Chinese money plants, but they're not from
But not.
Asia. It's from South America. So I don't know how that got that name, but that's a native plant to their area. And you know how they have those big, kind of long, broad leaves? They almost look like a cannabis plant in a way. They will
Yeah.
grapple one of those leaves and sleep on that leaf. You know what I mean? And it's probably just it's definitely just a way to avoid predation in the middle of the night because
Hmm.
it's such a fine little stem and it's a big leaf where if let's say a snake were to be, coming up towards them, they could drop off that onto the ground and scurry away before they get predated on. So yeah, but for the most part, I think setting them up, if I had more space, I'd like to give them a wider, more as equally as wide of an enclosure versus tall. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
because they do use the height, but they use the floor space more. So I think
Okay.
like something even like a 36 by 24 high would be really, would work really well for them. I
Yeah,
don't
like
think that
one of
they would
those
need.
Exoterra ones. Like it's like
Yeah,
I think it's
yeah.
like 36, 18, 24 or something like that.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I think
Okay.
that would suffice because they don't really seem to need the height as much as they do the floor space. They make more use
Okay.
of the floor space than they do the height most of the time.
How big are they?
They're not that big. I would say like 6 inches
Oh,
snout to
damn.
vent, maybe like 10 with their tail,
Okay.
maybe a little longer, 11. I think they're under a foot, but they're heavy bodied for the most part. They're not like a lanky lizard. They have a good body build to them. Strong limbs, nice thick torso, big fat head on them. One of their other common names is broad-headed wood lizard. Um,
Okay.
there's a name in Spanish that I can't remember off the top of my head that they call them fat heads in the wild.
Okay.
So they have, if you look at them from the top, they have a very strange shape to the top of their head. It's very wide, broad. They go by Amazon forest dragon, broad-headed wood lizard, Amazon wood lizard, Amazon dwarf iguana. I think it's Gouchenots. I'm probably murdering that, but Gouchenos, dwarf iguana, right? So they've got like 7 different common names. It's crazy.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Shit. What was it? Oh, so for I guess the like lighting and stuff, are you just strictly just using UVB or do you have like a little like 25-watt halogen or something on like a dimmer for them to actually
Yes.
kind of thermal regulate?
Yeah, I mean, on some of them I have just UVB because the UVB strips are providing where they are. It's providing enough heat and everything for them. On a few of them that I have in a cooler, like the ones that are in quarantine in the back part of my basement, it's a little cooler back there right now.
Hmm.
So I did put a little 25-watt halogen on them just to bring the ambient temperatures of the enclosures up a little bit. The ones that are in the main reptile room don't have any halogens besides the babies, like I said. But I think I'm going to turn that off pretty soon because they just don't seem to use it. And I've been playing around with it where they seem to actually be a little bit like they avoid it. If it gets during the day, if it gets a little warm in there, they're going towards the ground and everything, So I've been playing around with it. I don't think it's something I'll offer for them in the summertime because it'll probably get too warm. I mean, I do, what's the word I'm looking for? Not monitor the temps, but control the temperatures within those rooms and stuff with
Yeah,
air
yeah.
conditioning or
Like
heat
the
and everything
ambient
like
temps
that.
and
But
stuff.
yeah, I like to try at least in the fall and spring not to use the AC or heat. You know what I mean, and kind of just let the room regulate itself. So yeah, but overall they don't. They really, like I said, I've never seen any of my adults bask before. I've never seen the babies make use of the heat lamps or anything like that. So I don't think it's something that they need. I guess I could get into, if talking about heat. One thing that was pretty interesting with them, like I said, if you look at the locations where they're found, it's going to tell you that the temperatures can get up into the 90s and everything like that. But again, they're a lizard that inhabits very closed canopy areas, very wet areas too. They are found in close proximity to streams and stuff like that, small streams. So you got to imagine on the forest floor in a closed canopy rainforest with a lot of water around, temperatures are going to be drastically cooler than the
Yeah.
air temperature that you're reading on your weather app. So there were a few keepers over in Europe, Germany mostly, that had some success breeding their laticeps last year. And everybody who got eggs ended up failing with the eggs.
Mm.
So, and I started with the same temperatures, talking with them, with that community. I'm in touch with those people and stuff, and we're all kind of bouncing ideas off of each other to the extent. But 78 degrees, I don't know how that came up. They seem to think it's like a standard incubation temperature for lizards from that region. So
Yeah.
78 degrees is what we all started with incubating eggs. Now, the guys in Europe had eggs before any of us did here in the U.S. There's only myself and Cody Bryan who produce these in the U.S. here. I don't think there's anybody in Europe that's produced them yet. They had, like I said, got eggs, but everybody failed with the eggs, unfortunately. But 78 degrees was the target temperature that we all used. So Cody actually had 2 clutches of eggs on the ground before I had my first clutch of eggs on the ground. And he started them at a constant 78 in the incubator. The guys in Europe were telling me that they were losing their clutches about 90 days into incubation. Some of them sooner, some of them shortly after. So Cody is a good friend of mine. We talk almost daily, especially about this when we were trying to figure these guys out and everything. So his first clutch of eggs ended up crapping out around, I want to say it was like 180 to 200 days of incubation. So they were basically,
Yeah.
they're
Oh,
a long incubation period on them.
that's monitor
Um,
stuff right there, man.
but they were basically ready to hatch out. He saw the eggs
Okay.
sweat, and the temperature of 78 degrees, just the babies basically can't handle it. I don't know if they overheat,
Hmm.
trying to get out of the egg, whatever it is, but lost the whole clutch. Second clutch started to sweat, same difference, lost the whole clutch. So when we talked about it, immediately to me, I've dealt with things like that before. That immediately tells me that the incubation temperatures are too hot. You know what I mean? The babies were fully formed, everything was ready to go. Then they die trying to get out of the egg, or they die in the very last, portion of their incubation period. So I only had the 1 clutch of eggs on the ground at the time. So I yoked mine out of the room that they were in and quick got them down to the cool room. And they were sitting at about 74 degrees. Mine, I did that probably about halfway through the incubation, maybe a third of the way through the incubation. We kind of figured that out. So 74 degrees seems to be the target temps, and you'll get good healthy babies that hatch out. But just also that kind of relates back to, like I said, when we're talking about temperatures and the environment and everything like that. Clearly, these lizards are seeking out much, much cooler areas than what
Yeah.
they're, some of the environment. Now, I mean, parts of they're so widespread. The ones from Ecuador are probably dealing with a completely different environment because it's a lot cooler in most of the areas that they're found in Ecuador. You know what I mean? They can
Okay.
range from like 100 meters or even less, I think, elevation up to like I don't want to quote it because I'm not sure, but I think they can get up to like 900 meters. So that's up there. That's a big difference between near sea
Oh yeah.
level and not. But yeah, they're clearly seeking out much cooler areas to lay eggs and just to live their lives than whatever the ambient air temperature is in the open parts of the forest. You know what I mean? So
So what do you have your adult pairs in right now? Because you said you
they're
think maybe giving them bigger ones right than what you have right now. What are you working with?
yeah, they're in 24 1836s right now.
Okay.
So it's like I said, for as little as they move, they're very much inactive lizards. They don't move around a whole
Okay.
lot. So for as much as they move around, it's more than enough room. But I would like to, if I had the space, because I have a group of them and everything, I would like to put them all in 36 wides just to give them, and I could maybe skimp on the height and go down to 24 high instead of 36 high, just to give
Yeah.
them, a little bit more floor space to move around. But they're not very active lizards. You know what I mean? They're, like I said, behaviorally, they remind me so much of a Shinosaurus. Everything about
Yeah.
them reminds me of a Shinosaurus. So, I've kept both species. I see the similarities between the two. Just, even the way they look at things, their eyesights, their eyes even look very much like a Chinese crocodile lizard. It's super
Yeah.
weird, behaviorally for them.
Yeah, but they're kind of like semi-aquatic because they like to be in the water as well, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you haven't really tested that theory out, right? Or like you just give them a big water bowl to kind of just chill in, but
Yeah.
you think maybe if you gave them like that 36-inch and then had like a water feature where they can kind of go and
Oh,
see
they would
that,
use it.
maybe see a different
They would
behavior.
absolutely utilize it. And the
Yeah.
interesting, like another interesting thing with them is like Chinese crocodile lizards, if you've ever kept them, they only defecate in the water. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm pretty sure that's just a way to avoid predation. You know what I mean? Because you're kind of covering up your scent. You know what I mean? Something like a Chinese
Okay.
crocodile
Yeah.
lizard that
Gotcha.
doesn't move around a lot and stays in a very small vicinity almost its entire life, other than maybe a male looking for females to breed with. They always defecate in the water. If you've ever kept one, you will never find poop on the land. So they're
Yeah.
easy. They're easy to keep in that aspect for if you don't mind doing water changes, because your whole bioactive land portion. If you've got When I used to keep them, I did like a 50-50 land water, so they would have deep substrate plants, everything like that on the one side, and they had a big water basin where I had dividers in between the exos where it was just a big water basin on the other side. But they'll never poop on land. These guys are the same way. They always defecate in water. They do not defecate on land. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
once out of every 10 times will they defecate on. So,
Okay.
but it's so that kind of leads me to believe that if they did have a big water feature like that, they would absolutely utilize it. You know what I mean? More than just the water bowl. But you don't need once they're nice and established, you don't need to have that in order to maintain them. My pairs are breeding and doing everything that they need to be doing, and seem to be enjoying life and everything like that with just having clean, fresh water every day.
Yeah. So with breeding, do you have to are you cycling them? Like, are you giving like different night day cycles before and after, like before breeding season and after, like once breeding season starts?
Mhm.
Do you have to do you have to bring them down in temp like beforehand?
A lot of that stuff, a lot of the stuff that I work with just experiences that naturally here because I'm in the
Yeah.
Northeast. So we have 4 seasons. So I can't
Yeah.
really stop it from happening. You know what I mean? My daylight hours grow shorter. It gets colder in the winter and everything like that, and vice versa in the
Yeah.
summertime. So they are exposed to that naturally. I do shorten the daylight hours a little bit from 14 to 12. They're pretty
Okay.
equatorial, so there's not a big
Not a big
change in
change.
daylight hours
Okay.
as much.
Yeah.
So, but I'll go like usually during the summertime for almost everything. I run 14 hours a day. Daylight, some of the species like Euryplotus and stuff, I'll bring their daylight hours down even a little bit more, during the winter. But these guys, they're on a 12 on, 12 off right now. From what I've read, they breed all year round
Oh
in the
shit.
wild.
Okay.
So, but what I've noticed in captivity is it seems like late fall and early spring seem to be the peak breeding seasons. So,
Okay.
it's kind of weird because it's almost opposite. It's like once it starts to cool off is when they start to want to breed. So,
Okay.
I had a bunch of breeding in, I want to say it was October. I had the pairs, all 3 pairs that I've got were locking up daily for about 2 weeks straight in late October.
Okay.
I got a couple clutches of eggs from that. I haven't seen much action over the winter. I did catch 1 pair breeding last week, but nothing serious. The male had just bit the female behind the nape and was holding on to her for a little bit, but wasn't really being pushy about it like they were back in October. But yeah, so it seems seasonal, you know what I mean? And then I guess early spring now, March, April, I'll probably start to see some more breeding. In summertime, I didn't see anything. So during the warmest periods of the month, I didn't notice any kind of breeding behavior or anything like that. But
That's
yeah,
interesting
as
right
far
there.
as like I said, as far as cycling them, they do just get a cool down, not by a lot, but maybe 8-10 degrees at most, a variation, I would say.
Okay.
So it's relatively stable. Their nighttime temps probably drop a little bit cooler this time of year than they would in the summer, but that's it. Like I said, with the equatorial species, you're not going to do drastic daylight, and temperature changes. It's relatively stable for the most part.
Yeah. What about precipitation? Do you change their spray intervals or their watering intervals? Like like a heavier misting time or
Yes.
a shorter mister time, things like
Yes.
that.
Yep. So I mean, obviously during the rainy season, I'm spraying them. So the summer, Summer months are just like ours, where it'd be hotter and drier. You know what I mean? And then
Okay.
spring would be a rainy season. Late fall would be a rainy season.
Okay.
So yeah, I spray them heavier at those times. But I pretty much,
Okay.
they are very dependent on water too. So I spray them every day. So it's not like they're not getting sprayed daily. They
Yeah,
get
yeah, yeah. It's
sprayed
just
daily. It's just
how
maybe
long those
I'll
cycles are.
saturate the enclosure a little bit more than normal. You know.
Yeah, because I guess like they correlate that with because we had a what was it we had a Roy on talking about the polychris, and it was like,
Yes.
yeah, so when they're getting sprayed down, that means that there's an abundance of everything else. There's abundance of
Yes.
food. There's an abundance of plants. So that means, all right, now it's time to breed. So I think that's the correlation to it
hmm
when we start spraying. So so how long did the eggs take to before they hatched?
So this is interesting. I don't know if I should share this or not yet, because there's a lot of proprietary information here that
Oh
took
shit.
a long time and a lot of conversations to figure out. And I mean, like I said, Cody and I have been the only two people out of anybody who's gotten eggs from these guys to be successful on hatching them. And I really have to say that's mostly because of him, of Cody, because I wouldn't have tried this if it weren't for him playing around with these things to try and figure this out. I don't know if any of us would have hatched them out yet. But so the incubation period can take, for me, it was the first clutch that I hatched, it was 226 days. So
Damn.
it's a long time. It's a long time. But we've also, and when I say we, I mean he. But like I said, this is a project that him and I have worked on very closely together. We've also hatched them in as little as 180 days. So
Mhm.
there's a big variation there. You're talking what, 40s? No, 100, yeah, 46 to 50 days roughly, right? Um, so there's something that triggers the eggs to hatch. The eggs seem to not hatch unless they have that trigger, which is very
Mhm.
odd, but they need to go through a dry out period, right? So I know Roy had mentioned something like that. I was listening to the Polychris episode and everything, because believe it or not, these guys are very similar as far as like incubation times,
Yeah.
incubation methods, everything like that. The Laticeps or Enuleoides in general, I think, if we could generalize it, we don't really know, because this is the only species anybody's really worked with. But
Okay.
very similar. Definitely the Laticeps line up with those Polychris, especially the Peruvianus that he keeps. But the eggs seem to need to start out very moist. I tried a suspension method, like a suspension tray, above
Okay.
sopping wet media, very humid inside the incubation chamber, but the eggs desiccated overnight. So the first time that I incubated them directly on perlite, and that was a success. So I've gotten 3 clutches more recently that I've had 16 eggs that I'm incubating currently from them. So I tried a suspension tray method, see how that would work. A day and a half went by, and I went and checked the eggs, and they were all shriveled up and desiccated already. So I immediately, not terribly, but significantly sunken in. So I moved them onto very damp perlite again, and they plump back up, and they're all looking good again. But yeah, so it seems that they need to be started on very moist soil, or not soil, media.
Some media. Yeah.
Right. So, and then I'm not sure if they have to go through a dry out period. Roy said with the Polychris, his have to be start out wet, then go through a dry period, then go through another wet period, and I think finally another dry period. I'm not sure that these need that, but the one thing that Cody did, which triggered the incubation of his first, or the hatching of his first clutch, was this was all from Roy. Like, this was something that Roy had said. It was kind of in Cody's mind, where like, well, maybe these guys, they're from very similar area, or maybe they do need the same thing. So let me just try it. So he took one of the incubation cups with the Laticeps eggs, and he pulled the lid off of it and left it exposed to just open air in his reptile room for 8 hours. He was working in the room all day, and then when he was done, he ended up putting the lid back on, putting them back into the incubator. And when he came in the next morning, all the eggs were sweating, like super,
Oh,
like
okay.
huge beads of sweat.
Uh,
So then they hatched that day. Every one of them hatched that day.
hmm.
So when he told me this, I was like, there's no way, dude. I was like, that is just coincidence. They were ready to hatch. They were at 200 and I think they were over 220 days. Those were at like 237 days, I think. I was like, this is coincidence, dude. They were just ready to go, and you decided that, you're going to pull the lid off that day, and it just ended up lining up. So he did it again with the second clutch because they were only laid about a week apart, the two clutches, because they were from different females. So he did it again, and same results where all the eggs sweat immediately. After that exposure to just open air for the day, they started to sweat. They all hatched. So now I'm thinking, I'm like, well, maybe there's really something to this. So I went ahead and did the same thing and had the same results. It was the weirdest thing I had ever experienced. Where
how many days were yours at?
Mine were at 226. So we've gone from 180 to 237 max. 226 were mine. The shortest period that we've had so far is 180. So when I was able to recreate that, now we're 3 clutches in that we've, been able to get the same exact results, where just exposing the eggs to open air for the day, letting them breathe basically, and then closing them up and putting them back, they will sweat and usually hatch within a day or two after that. So it was pretty amazing. So there's definitely something to it. And Cody's hatched out 4 clutches of them so far. I've hatched out 1. I have 3 other clutches incubating here right now. So, but we're going to keep playing with it, but there's something to that.
Yeah. It sounds like you said, when they bury, like in the wild, they bury their eggs, right? And so maybe it goes through that dry out period, then rains again or something, kind of gets humid again, then dries out. And then once that final dry out period, boom, now they're like, all right, it's time to get them out of here. Because I don't know how deep did they bury them for you?
About 4 or 5 inches. So pretty typical for most lizards in that, kind of I don't want to say family, but similar lizards like that, similar size lizards. It's pretty typical, 4 to 5 inches down.
Okay. Yeah. That's great information right there. Like, I'm sure people would never have even thought about that at all.
No, I wouldn't have either, to be honest. I have to, like I said, I have to attribute all that to him. But just the fact that we've been able to recreate it, 3 times, and then, to get my clutch hatched, and he's done another 2 clutches since then. So was pretty crazy. And it's just the same method. Pop the lid, let them air out for a few hours, and then the next day they'll hatch. So interestingly enough, though, with them, their eggs are like little capsules. I've never seen anything like this with any other species that I've worked with. I've showed some other, successful breeders and stuff who are into weird stuff like this. Even Roy, I was like, dude, have you ever seen anything like this? And he's like, I haven't. So they have like this thick gelatinous membrane on the inside of the egg. So the babies, when they come out, they'll break both sacs, but it's almost like, if you've seen a live birth, sometimes like, I work with a lot of live bearing species, but they're born in like a little embryonic sac, like a little membrane.
Yeah, a little thin sac that they got to bust open. Yeah.
Right. So they're basically encased in something like that, but then there's also an exterior, like thick gelatinous material surrounding that. And my theory is that is like a dehydration barrier to keep the eggs fully hydrated. So I think they're probably laid during like the wet season, right? Or one of the wetter periods of the year down there. They sop up all this excess water from the soil, and that creates like a sponge barrier. So when the eggs do go through a dry period, if it's too soon, they don't dehydrate indefinitely. Or I don't know. I don't know if it works both ways, where it helps keep water out, but it also helps the loss of moisture as well. Yeah. But it's nothing like I've seen. Like I had the first one didn't come out very fast, so I started to cut open the egg just to make sure it was good, because I was super nervous with this. So started to cut open the egg, and it was thick, man, like almost a 1/4 inch thick, gelatinous like membrane. It was like jelly, like this thick membrane around the embryonic sac that these things were encased in. So but I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen anything even remotely like that hatching out any type of lizard before. So it's weird. It's it's got to play into some sort of buffer for them, going through these wet seasons and dry seasons. So
Yeah, definitely.
but
That's what it sounds
you
like.
know, I think it's almost like the eggs are like little time capsules. Like they can sit in animated, or an inanimate like suspension, you know what I mean, almost indefinitely it seems, because if you can hatch them at 180 or 180 days just by pulling the lid off the container to, trigger that dry out period or whatever that they need, but also they can go up to 237 days in that same egg and not hatch until that trigger is applied. You know what I mean? It's weird. So it's almost like they just sit in this little inanimate,
Like you said, like it's
like
just,
state of suspension. When the conditions are right, they're ready to pop out, but that barrier inside the egg is keeping them safe until then.
yeah.
And they
So
don't
are
come
you gonna
out right
play with?
away. Like,
I was gonna
sorry,
say, are you
they
gonna
don't.
play with like days on this when you do it for your next ones?
Yeah, I'd like to try. And so I have a clutch that's like almost ready to go, but I don't know exactly when they were laid. I didn't dig them. Like
Okay.
I didn't find them. I suspected the female was gravid, and I didn't bother trying to dig them up right away. So I don't remember when they were laid.
Okay.
I saw she had laid another clutch several months after that. Those ones I was able to get to. And when I was getting those ones out, I found the older clutch. So I have a clutch that should be ready to hatch like any time, but I'm not
Yeah.
exactly sure when they were laid. So I'm waiting. I'll pull the lid when I'm ready. It seems like they can go, indefinitely, for whatever amount of time. So I'm like, I don't want to push it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I totally lost train of thought. I'm sorry. What was your
No, you're all
question?
good, man. No, I was gonna say, are you gonna play with those days, saying like, all right, we're at like day 120. I'm gonna open it real quick, give them a dry out period, put the thing back on, and see what happens from there. And if nothing happens, then like another 30 or 40 days, open back up, boom, same thing, kind of, and kind of see where that threshold is.
Yeah, yeah. I think 180 days is going to be bare minimum that I
Okay.
do, because it does seem that they take a long time to develop. They're, similar, like mountain horn dragons are the same way, right? Mountain horn dragons take 180 days to incubate before you'll even see any
Hmm.
of them start to pip or anything like that. And they seem to have a lot of the same similarities, again, in behavior and stuff like that, similar habitat that they occupy. So I think they are a species that requires a long incubation, like 180 days. I did hear of one person in Europe hatching supposedly one egg out that was dropped by a wild caught female in 90 days time. I don't believe it, because the incubation temperatures that I was told would have killed that baby inside the egg in 90 days. I
Yeah.
don't think that, for as long as the duration has been that we've seen, I don't think 90 days they would even be formed babies. Unfortunately, I did lose, like, to, be 100% transparent, what you were just saying, that clutch of eggs that I found that were further along, that were laid months before I dug them up. I did do that about 3 weeks after I found those eggs, because they were all well into development, very big eggs. They
Okay.
looked
Yeah.
just like the eggs that were ready, that I hatched the
About the
last time.
hatch. Okay.
So I left them on the media for about a month, maybe 3 weeks to a month. And then I was like, these look pretty much ready. And in my head, I was doing the math. I'm like, well, I know when she looked gravid and when her last clutch was. And then I knew when she laid, the next clutch that I had dug out and found those eggs. So they have about a 60-day period where they carry the eggs, 60 to 80 days where they're carrying the eggs before they deposit them. So I thought, doing the math, I'm like, yeah, that's probably, maybe they were laid around 7 months ago. So I thought they were ready to go. And I pulled the lid and I lost a couple of the eggs like overnight.
Mm.
Like that, I pulled the lid and I left them exposed to open air. And this was only about 2 hours. I came back into the room and one of them had completely blown out all the fluid out of its side. Like it was
Okay.
huge gelatinous mass on the side of this egg. I thought it was getting ready to hatch, so I left it alone. And about 2 days later, I looked at it. Nothing had changed. The egg totally deflated. I cut it open. There was I would say 80%. It was a fully formed baby, but it hadn't developed any of its color yet. So it almost looked like an albino
Okay.
baby. It just didn't have
Oh
pigmentation to
shit.
the skin. Otherwise, it was fully formed, but it wasn't ready yet. So that was at a lower incubation temperature than we've used, though. Like I said, that soil temp was probably about 72 when they were laid, but they sat in there throughout most of the winter. The soil temp was closer to like 66, 68 degrees, I would say, probably
Okay.
68. So obviously a cooler incubation temperature is going to increase the duration and everything like that.
Yeah,
So I
definitely.
think it was a little too soon. So that's why the last couple eggs I have from that clutch, I'm just waiting it out. Not in a rush yet. It's been at least 2 months or so since I've found them. I'd have to go back to the Facebook or Instagram posts that I put up to see exactly what day I found those eggs. But I would say it's probably getting close. I think judging by, I had 2 of those from that clutch, 2 of those eggs go bad. Both babies were in the same state of development. So I think they were fully formed. Like I said, they just didn't have pigmentation to them yet. So I would think 2 months later at slightly warmer temps, they're hovering at about 73, 74. I think they're probably ready, but I'm just being patient with it. I'm not in a rush. I don't want to lose any of them.
Patience is a
such
virtue.
a cool lizard. I think really for the hobby, the captive bred ones are like, they're very hardy. Like I mentioned earlier, that they're hard to get established in the fact that, they don't acclimate quickly. You can't rush them along to do anything. But on the other hand, even the wild caughts are extremely hardy.
Okay.
They're almost, I don't want to say bulletproof, but like I said, even if they are in this like quote unquote dormant phase where they don't want to eat, they don't want to come out into the open, they're usually going to be okay. I mean, as long as you're still providing food or water opportunities for them, they will when they're ready. But all the ones that I've gotten wild caught have done well, except for that one male. They've all lived. I haven't lost a single one. So it's a super hardy lizard. Now the captive bred ones are like a night and day difference. They are very bold, very hardy, like a lot more active than the wild caughts. I think they're just not nearly as shy. Like my babies, I'll go to tongue feed them, man, and now they're to the point where like they're fighting each other to get at whatever it is on the tongs. They're, if there's one up here on the branch or something, and I go to feed that one, and there's one lurking around down on the ground, and he sees or she sees, the food item that I'm trying to feed the other one, they bolt across the enclosure up, try and like wrestle each other for food. Obviously, I try not to let that happen, but it's funny to see how much different the captive bred ones are in behavior. And like I said, they seem to be super hardy. I think it's going to be the further along we get into it. I'm not selling any of the ones that I've produced yet. I know Cody's not. We're going to do a bloodline
You got to build it up, man. Yeah.
We're going to build it up,
get those bloodlines going.
Yep.
Yeah. That's what you have to do first before you release stuff, because otherwise you're not going to have much to work with, and everybody's going to have all related shit. So
Right. Yeah. I mean, the good thing is he's got 3 unrelated wild caught pairs. I've got 3 unrelated wild caught pairs. And we've gotten eggs from every one of those pairs so far. So
nice.
I'm going to get all the bloodlines from his captive bred. He's going to get all the bloodlines from my captive bred. And we're just going to create, an even bigger group from that. I would honestly, if there were more wild caughts to come in, I would snap them up too, So
yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's how it should be too with stuff like this. Like you said, if you don't, like, you're never going to have, you're not going to have enough, and then you're going to risk putting together related pairs and all these genetic defects. So, speaking of like the differences between like wild caught and captive, so how tolerant are they of you going into, like you said, the wild caught ones, if you mess with a twig, it throws them all off. So for like your captive ones, how are they with you going inside their terrariums?
Yeah, they don't mind at all. Like doesn't change. I had something set up for them as they were hatching and everything. So as they were hatching, I was able to put them right into a nice planted viv and everything like that. I know Cody has messed around where he set them up in smaller critter keepers and raised, I think maybe 2 or 3 in like one of the bigger critter keepers. Very simple, you know what I mean? With just a few branches, a water bowl, and then he had another group where he raised them in a planted viv and everything like that. And he said he saw better growth and everything out of the ones in a critter keeper, which was kind of interesting to me. But, whatever. But now he's moved those. I mean, as they grew, he moved them out of that critter keeper and into a planted viv, and they didn't skip a beat. So,
See,
Yeah.
what about can do they tolerate any kind of handling, or they're like, nah, leave me alone, just give me some. Here's the tong and the food.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really handle like they will tolerate handling, sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They just kind of sit on your hand for the most part once you get them in hand.
yeah,
The wild caught ones, getting them in hand. They're not bitey. They're not, they will try and get away from you like most lizards when you go to pick them up or anything like that. But once they're in hand, they're usually very calm and will just sit there.
okay,
Um,
pretty
you know,
docile.
I would say that the captive breds would tolerate handling much better.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
No, I said
Like I
I'm
said,
not a handling person either, so I just
yeah,
for people in like out in the world, because that's usually a criteria for them. Can I handle
yes,
it? No, I
yeah,
always tell them like with mine, no. Like I said, I got these Haemophilus over here. Anytime I put my hand in there, her mouth is open. So no, I just look at them. That's it, hands off. Like
yeah,
I said, most of my geckos are hands off. Like even like my Sycamore right here, I don't pick her up at all. Like
right.
as soon as I open the thing up, she just arches her back and starts gaping. Like, whatever, I'm just here to spray you. That's it. Give you your water. I'm done.
And a lot
But
of the stuff that we work with is not really like what I would call a handling species. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I rarely. Also, when you keep a big collection and stuff, you don't have the time. It's not like put a lizard on your shoulder and walk around the house with it while you're doing your, reptile chores and stuff. Well, at least not for
yeah.
me. I know that is a thing for a lot of people, and that's great.
I mean, I can do that. Like I
Yeah,
have my intermedius. Like I can have a little baby chilling. I'll feed the baby while I'm feeding. Boom, boom, boom. Done. And he's just chilling right there. Like I said, I
yeah,
always say they're really personable, but even still, I very rarely do it. Like once in a blue moon. Like, all right, cool, come up here, chill. We'll go ahead and
yeah,
let me do some chores and then feed you while I'm feeding everybody, and I'll put you back. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't have the inclination to hold my geckos or whatever. Like they're not dogs, they're not cats,
yeah,
they're reptiles. So no.
yeah.
Um. What is this? So for your baby setups, are you putting them in like how many do you put into an enclosure? Do you see any kind of any like kind of like a chain of command? I guess it was what I'm trying to get at right there with that.
Yeah. So right now I had 5 hatchlings out of the group that I've hatched out so far, and I put them all
Hmm.
together in a 18-18-24. Super super well planted though. Tons and tons of
Yeah,
hiding spots for them to
yeah,
I mean
a lot of visual
tons. Like
barriers.
there's cork tubes sunk down under the soil just like I do for the adults. So there's little burrows that they can, and I've seen them both hang out inside them during the day, also sleep down in them on occasion. I also have I mean it's so planted it takes me a long time just to like put eyes on them.
Yeah,
When I go to feed them or something like that, I really have to look through. Usually once you give the cage a good misting, they'll start to just like pop out. I've got some cork hollows that are. I think you saw that post that I put up the other day
yeah, with the
with those
two.
shining twins. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
super cute with them. But that's got like an access entry or an entry down at the bottom that spans the whole back corner from floor to ceiling of that enclosure. So I've got like a little entry access down at the bottom, and then they'll climb up it, and then they can hang out, come out through the top too. But I've got all kinds of stuff like that, little cork rounds or cork um, half rounds that I have pressed up against the cork background. So there's little, spots where they can dip and get away from each other and everything like that. And all the different
yeah,
plants creates a big visual barrier in there for them. But with them, I have not noticed any of them really with any kind of hierarchy or
okay,
they don't pick on each other. They will, like I said, they'll get a little overzealous when it comes to food and maybe snatch something out of another one's mouth when I'm going to feed, and I'm if I don't get a prey item into that one's mouth quick enough, it'll just go snatch it out of its siblings. But they've gotten along really well so far, males and females.
okay,
It's 3 males and 2 females in that group. One female was a little bit slower starter, but now she's caught right up to her siblings and she's doing
okay,
really, really well. But yeah, other than that, I mean, they're getting to the point, like to the size now, though, where I'm going to start breaking the group down a little bit more. And
yeah,
probably keep them in like pairs or something. They're not going to breed together, but I will be sending a couple of the ones that I currently have out to Cody. He's going to be sending me some of the ones as soon as we get a shipping window coming up here. He's going to be sending me some of the ones that he's been raising up. So the group will inevitably get broken down a little bit further at that point. And then, because I'm not going to, throw the ones from him, they're going to get their own Viv and everything like that, so I can keep track of all the different bloodlines. But yeah, I mean, for raising them, they've honestly been one of the easier species as far as like housing in groups. Some of the other stuff that I keep, I've had some issues recently with, like with the Colodis, Pethiogodi and stuff, with them biting each other's tails off during feeding. It's not been so great. So I'm having I mean, they're like little raptors, though. We don't have to get into it on them, but they're like crazy feeding response when they're young. So the adults don't do it. The adults have just a strong feeding response, but they're more mindful of what they're biting versus the babies. If it's moving, they're going to bite at it. So if one jumps over here to go get a cricket and this one's tail's like in the breeze as it's going by, it might get chomped. So, also I've got like 40 of them here at almost all times at this point, because as soon as I move some along, some more hatch out. So it seems like I have a revolving door of having 40 of those Colodis here at any one time. So it's, I only have so much space, and I keep them in groups of like 3, but shit happens every once in a while. You can't,
definitely.
You can't stop it. Unfortunately, I don't have room to keep them all.
What's how many eggs in the clutch for them?
For the Laticeps, we've seen as much as 7 so far.
Okay. Right.
So 5 to 7 seems pretty typical.
Yeah. And you said like every few months?
What's that?
You said like every few months that they drop eggs?
Yes. Every 2 months, 2 to 3 months, they could do another clutch. Again, we're kind of still figuring out breeding. Is there breeding seasons? Is it just random? Is it a seasonal thing? Everything, like I said, if you read on Wikipedia or even that, that book, the Reptiles of Ecuador book, it says that they just breed year round. So that might happen in nature, but like I said, still a lot to be learned with these things.
Yeah, definitely.
Just
like so with
so far.
With the babies, because you said that they don't like crickets. Do the babies accept crickets, or is it the whole species is like, nah, we don't mess with crickets at all?
The babies, I've never personally seen them eat one, but I put them in there and they disappear. Not fast, but they do disappear. I know they're not getting out, and I know they're not, just dying off, because I would be finding dead crickets in there. So they must be eating them, but I think that's like only if it runs straight in front of its face. They don't seem to want to chase it down or anything like that.
Oh, okay.
They love dubia roaches. They go nuts for those. I've done green banana roaches. They love those. Hornworms.
Oh, those are the ones that fly, right? Those big ass things.
Yeah. We've talked about those before.
God damn, I can't do it.
They're not that bad. They really don't. They don't fly in your environment. They'd be dead within hours if they got out of the. They dry up really quick. They need very high humidity. So even here in my humid basement, if I do have one get away, I usually find it dead within a day or so. But they're a nice prey item, bro. I like, everybody gets all sketched out because they can climb and fly, but honestly, get yourself one of those waterproof, the ones with the little silicone gaskets, and set them up with that. Just a small air vent or something on the very top of it, and keep them warm and humid, and feed them bananas and fruits and greens and stuff like that, and they do well. But I guess like if you let them loose in like a Strophurus enclosure, they're not going to reproduce or anything. Like I said, they need it really humid and warm, not dry. They dry out very quickly. But yeah, they're not big on flying.
Okay. Yeah, it's just something I would have to, once I get my own little spot where I can have my own place, or not my own place, but my little guest house or whatever, where I can do all that stuff, because my girl will probably kill me. So same thing with like red runners too. Like she'd probably kill me.
Those scare me.
Like
honestly.
I've had red runners, and they never climbed on the walls or nothing. They just chilled on the bottom on the egg crates, but my Stropheres love them. Like they just go round and round and round trying to chase that thing, trying to get them. So it's just I mean,
those things make me nervous. I've got a little colony of those, and I read that that they won't reproduce in your house if they got let loose. I guarantee you that they would
Yeah,
reproduce in my house if they got let loose.
I've
Because
I've
I kept
heard.
them.
I said I've heard people have those and they survive the winters. So no,
Yeah.
they probably
Yeah.
would. So damn that.
So before I got into them, did some reading about them and everything, and I know they can't climb, so that was a plus, and that's why I said, all right, well, if they can't climb, then I'll take a crack at it because I know a lot of things like them. My toad-head
Yeah.
agamas right here behind me, they go
Oh,
nuts.
that's the ones that
for
are
it.
scratching. I was like,
Yeah,
what the hell is that
that's if you
scratching?
hear the scratching, it's the toad-head agamas.
Yeah. No, I just see
They're
the
always
head
on the
pop
move.
up and boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, they're always on the move. They're always scratching and making a mess and stuff.
Yeah.
But
those
yeah,
things
they
are so
love
cool.
the red runners.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I got some red runners. I bought a group of 200 adults and I set them up in a bin. I read that if you want them to breed well, that you got to put them on, put heat on them and everything like that. And they've been in a bin, that sealed silicone gasket bin down in my basement the whole winter in the back corner, which is, that's where I keep all my bug colonies and my isopods and stuff. And it does tend to be the coldest part of the basement as well back there. So like 62 degrees. And I've got thousands of baby red runners in there with no
Oh
heat,
shit.
nothing else put on it. There are thousands and thousands of baby red runners. So God forbid one of those were to get loose in my house. They would
Right.
absolutely, yeah. So I'm really like, I don't even use them that often because I'm just so afraid that God forbid one doesn't get eaten right away and it starts reproducing in the enclosure, then it's all
Oh
over
man,
with
yeah.
from, Roach
Yeah.
Motel after that.
Yeah, that's scary right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Scary, and
I
then it's
tongue
a
feed them. That's all I
headache.
do. Just tongue feed them.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Yeah, for sure. Right. So, well, so for the hatchlings, is there any kind of health concerns that we should people should like think about with these? Have you noticed anything with them?
health concerns, like,
Yeah. Like, have you noticed any of them? Like, I mean, just playing around because I know you're still working, trying to figure all this stuff out. Have you noticed anything that didn't work that you switched up?
not really. Like I said, they're very hardy lizards. Even the wild caught ones are very forgiving as far as, you know, you're probably not going to do anything that's going to kill them unless maybe overheating them. I could see that being, but I think they could, even tolerate periods of, I don't want to say extreme heat, but heat that they're maybe not comfortable with for,
Okay. Long
a
periods
good
of
period
time.
of time. But,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, no, so far, they've been really hardy. Like I said, even the wild caughts have been really hardy. The captive breds are 10 times more hardy than that. So,
Yeah.
haven't noticed anything. I treat them for the most part just like I do any of my other arboreal agamids or anything like that. I mean, supplementation is basically the same. Calcium. I do calcium almost at every feeding.
Okay.
Vitamin supplements like once a week. You could probably, they don't, see, that's still to be determined. We don't really know because I haven't tried it, but you probably want to make sure you're not putting excessive UVB on them or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
6% shade dweller UVB. One thing on getting the wild caught ones established that was another key factor to kind of getting them to behave normally or just come out of hiding or anything was dim lighting.
Okay.
I would say if you do happen to get, a wild caught pair, if this is something that, is intriguing to you and you end up getting them, what I would say is set them up with dim lighting, one UVB strip to start. You know what I mean? Don't put LEDs and all this other shit on there right away. Keep it very dim lighting, moving water. I think the basins with the air stone is probably the easiest to get them acclimated. That way it's easier. Those fountains work well, but they can be a pain in the neck too. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
got a bunch of different
Yeah.
parts that you got to take out and sterilize everything. Where the water basin, you can quick, pop that out, clean off the air stone, clean out the basin, put it in with fresh water. I found that worked a lot better for me than the fountains do. Just something that they can get, that's big enough for them to get their bodies in and soak and everything like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, I mean, they're pretty easy. Like I said, pretty easy as far as the hardiness and not running into too many issues with them. But Yeah, that's really it. I haven't noticed anything other than that so far. You know.
Okay. I know we didn't talk about, but what I was about to say, what was it? So for your, like you said, when you were talking about incubation, now was it a controlled temps, or was it like you're doing like day and night cycles with that, just letting it kind of wherever the temps are in your room,
Yeah.
or if it drops at night and then at day it stays at like 74 or something like that.
Yeah. So I'm big on fluctuation because nothing is constant or consistent in nature, right? So I
Yeah.
mean, I honestly don't ever use. I think there's like one species of lizard that I've hatched before that I used an incubator for, and that was Anolis barbatus when I was breeding them.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I just find a suitable area within the room that I'm keeping those eggs to kind of mitigate temperature fluctuations. I don't know if we talked about this on Gecko Exchange or anything, but I'm really old school with my methods and stuff with things like that. So honestly, I just take uh, their styrofoam boxes, like what you would
Like a
get, like a
hoverbaiter.
frozen food or something like that,
Oh
shipped to
yeah,
you
yeah,
in,
yeah. Okay.
where they're like
Yeah,
two and a half, like Omaha steaks, right? If you've ever gotten one of them, they're
yeah,
the
yeah,
boxes they ship those in are like 2.5 to 3 inch thick styrofoam walled boxes that seal when obviously it's sealed for cold storage and everything like that. So they've got a nice seal. I take those, and if it's something like that I'm needing to keep a moderate temperature or cooler temperature or even a warmer temperature, I line the whole bottom of it with cryo packs with the phase change packs and stuff.
yeah.
So I'll put phase change packs all along the bottom of the that styrofoam box, and then kind of just stack the eggs in their cups above that, and I'll add cryo packs to it or remove them as necessary. But yeah, I usually just try and find an area in the room that for the laticeps per se. I do have those in the warmer room, but it's only getting up to about 76, 78 in there during the day. But I'm keeping the eggs down by the floor, right next to a window. So those eggs are not
Okay.
getting above 73 degrees inside that styrofoam box with the cryo packs in it. The cryo packs just help to mitigate like temperature, like really quick temperature
Yeah,
fluctuations.
yeah,
That thick styrofoam wall box is helping out with that too. But it definitely drops, you know what I mean? Like I said, it's near the floor, near a window. So at night, those eggs are probably dropping to about 68, something like that. And then during the day, they're peaking at about 73, even though the rest of the room is at 78 to 80 degrees. But that's the way I like to do it. I don't know. I've hatched out thousands of baby lizards out. Like,
yeah. I mean,
except for the
if it's
Anolis
working, why
barbatus.
change it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I like it because the one thing that scares me about with your regular commercial incubators and everything like that is failures, right? I mean, I
Yeah,
can't tell you so many times where, either had something overheat. Even when I was doing the Anolis barbatus, the incubator I was using, I would set it for 78 degrees. Sometimes I would come down and it would be at 83, 84. I'm like, that's too hot.
yeah, yeah,
Or it would be cooler at night. It's hard. That was a kind of just a cheap one of those Exoterra, styro incubator things. It
yeah,
works
yeah,
for what it is, but keeping like a consistent temperature. It's not like if you were to buy like a Will Banks incubator or something. But I don't produce a lot of lizards or anything that need to be kept hotter. Now, if I was doing something that needs to be incubated at 86, 87 degrees, then I'm going to have to go with an incubator. You know what I mean? But a lot
yeah.
of the species that I work with are around room temperature. You know what I mean? The Eurypletus
Okay,
and stuff
yeah,
like that. I do the same thing with them where they've got their own box downstairs where I've got that placed in an area where it's, usually sitting at about 72 degrees or something like that. Um,
nice, nice.
yeah, yeah, it just scares me that, if I'm something that I've got so much time and effort invested into, that one flaw with an incubator can screw the whole thing up. I had that happen
Yeah,
to a
no,
friend over the summer. I was watching his collection while he was in Greece. He had me taking care of everything except for his Eastern indigo snakes, which he had another friend of his, which was he's another breeder of Eastern indigos. I don't know why he did this, but he had that guy taking care of the indigo snakes and me taking care of the lizards while he was gone. Well, he had two clutches of eggs in a nice professional incubator while he was away. I think it was like 19 eggs in total. The guy who was taking care of the indigos, the last day he was there, accidentally knocked the probe out of the incubator. So when I
Oh,
came, it was a day and a half later when I came to check on everything. And my buddy Chris had asked me if I could, he's like, so and so couldn't make it there today. Would you mind if any of the indigos hatched? Because these guys were hatching as he was away.
mm.
The other guy
Oh
was
shit.
pulling
Oh,
babies that were popping out of the eggs and setting them up and everything like that. I was just taking care of the lizards. But he had asked me to check the eggs and if there was any babies that had hatched out, pull them, put them in their baby setups and everything like that. And I'd come in and man, the whole front door of the incubator was covered, just saturated, dripping water from
oof.
the inside. There was a puddle of water on the floor. He had accidentally knocked the probe out of the inside of the incubator, so the probe was hanging on the outside, and whatever it was supposed to be set for, it wasn't registering as what the temperature was
Yeah.
in the incubator. Cooked 13 eggs on them. Cooked. I
Damn.
mean, those are Eastern Indigos. You're looking at like what, $1,200-$1,500 a piece on those.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah,
it was an
that's a lot of
entire
money right
clutch.
there. Damn.
It was an entire unrelated clutch to the first ones that started hatching. So you're not going to experience that when you're just using a styrofoam box with some cryo packs inside it. There's nothing
Oh yeah.
that can
Yeah.
go wrong, you know what I mean, mechanically like that. So I don't know. It's old school. It's not for everybody. It's what works for me though.
Yeah, like I said, if it's working, keep on doing it. You
Yep.
know. Are they? So you said are you sexing these lizards right out the egg, or does it take a little bit of time?
So they seem to show sexual dimorphism.
Okay.
I know Cody, he had a lot more trouble with, but mine were clear males and females. So I don't
Okay.
know, like his,
What are
I saw
those
pictures of all his.
characteristics?
Yeah, I saw pictures of all his babies, and they at first looked to all be male. Just so the
Mm.
males have a characteristic of a white stripe on the side of their lip that kind of goes from the corner of their mouth to like the back of their chin or the back of their neck area. So they'll have a
Yeah.
white stripe there. Typically, males also have a black patch on the throat. And then also the pattern is a little bit different, but the babies, the pattern is the same on all of them. There's no
Okay.
difference in pattern. That starts to develop later. But I had 3 that came out that had that clear white stripe on the side of the face, and they all had black patches on the throat. It was very faint, but they're coloring up. The females, where that white stripe would have been, was just green, so there was no patterning there.
Okay.
And their throats were just basically red without the black patch. So it was
Okay.
pretty easy to distinguish with that clutch. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if with the next clutches that I've got hatching out, if it'll be that clear of sexual dimorphism or if it's going to be like confusing. But yeah, that's how I've done it. You can at this point now they were born in November, I think they hatched out. So at this point, you can start to see a little bit of difference in the tail base too. The
Okay.
hemipenal bulges on the males and lack thereof on the females.
Gotcha. Do they go through any color changes as they grow?
They just gain color. You know what I mean?
Okay.
They just get more and more colorful. The pattern will develop, but I mean the base colors I don't think the base colors change that much. Like
Okay.
I don't know. We'll see. You know what I mean? This is the first time anyone's ever raising babies of this species. So we don't
Okay.
really
Yeah.
know, but they don't look that much different than the adults to begin with. Like,
Okay. All right. Yeah.
the males have this kind of intricate, almost like lattice work netting pattern underlaid their other pattern. It's weird to describe. Like if you were to take like fishnet stockings and spray paint, you know what I mean, and then remove the fishnet,
Yeah.
and you see that whole lattice
Yeah. Yeah.
work of.
Yeah.
So they kind of have that underlaid under like bands and other stuff like that. That's for the males that look like that. The females are more just they sometimes they have bands. I've seen pictures of some that are just solid colored with really no patterning, but a lot of times they have like little ocelli on their back, and they might have some like chevrons going across their back and everything. So it'll be interesting to see the variability between the two and everything. But I was surprised, to be honest, how brightly colored green the females that I hatched out were, because the mother is more of like an army green color typically, and the
Mhm.
babies are neon green. The
Oh
females,
shit.
they are like fluorescent green. They are beautiful. So, yeah.
Dang. Nice.
But I think there's just a lot of variability within the species. You know what I mean, as far as
Okay.
coloration and stuff.
Well, I know you're gonna be documenting all that stuff, man.
I hope so.
So I got a couple. Well, I got one closing question. It's coming up because we're about an hour and a half in. So, what do you like about this hobby, and what's something that you wish would change about this hobby?
I love everything about this hobby. I mean, I've lived it, breathed it, everything. It's consumes my every thought and my whole life basically. 35 years. This has been an obsession of mine. What I would like to see change about the hobby, people need to leave politics out of the hobby right now. I'm getting so tired of that shit. I am really getting tired of it. I'm unfriending a lot of people. That's one thing, word to the wise, especially if you sell reptiles for a living, keep your political opinion out of it because it's so divided at this point. We all have a very
Yeah,
different opinion and it's not conducive to sales if this is what you do for a living or anything like that.
yeah,
I I try and keep my mouth shut. I made that mistake once, you know, somewhat recently, a few months ago at a show where I got into a little, thing with someone about politics and it didn't, I've already lost that friendship because of it, unfortunately, but I guess we weren't really
damn,
friends to begin with if politics comes between friendship, but everybody's so divided right now. Everybody's putting up their political, I'm only on social media for the reptiles. That's all I give a shit about. So I don't care about your political
exactly.
opinion.
Yeah,
Let's all tone it down and bring it let's make it about the reptiles again. You know what I mean? No one's
yeah.
going to change anything that's going on right now. So let's just keep it reptiles. That's what I want to see change. Currently, the current situation with the hobby.
Oh yeah, I definitely feel that. Like I said, I know I stay out of all that stuff as well. I'm like, all right,
Yep.
cool, whatever. Who's the president? Cool. All right,
Yeah.
next,
Yep.
let's go.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't post about that stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
look at my gecko. That's about
Yep.
it.
Yep. Yep.
or whatever funny shit I find. That's about it, man.
Yep.
Or, dude, oh man, thank you for coming on and like I said,
I
being my
appreciate
first guest
having me.
on this one, dude. Like, yeah, dropping that knowledge and like I said, you've been putting in that work, dude. You put in the work with the collodies, the cafodes, and now these latticeps. I'm sure you got some more stuff that's in there that you probably haven't said, and I'm sure like you. I mean, you just you keep doing this stuff and giving people these opportunities, and that's the thing that I like to see is you're giving people these opportunities to like, is that something I want to work with in the future? Now someone's starting to get those established here. So
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
thank you for that, man. Thank you for being a
I
positive
appreciate it. Thank you.
influence in this hobby.
I appreciate it. Thank
No,
you. Yeah. I try and put out, if there's something I've learned, I want to share it with everybody so they can, be successful. I'm not one of those guys who's into gatekeeping or anything like that. You know what I mean? I had mentioned that about the latticeps because I'm like, this is kind of proprietary. I like the fact that us Americans were the first ones to hatch them out before the Germans were able to do it. But that's kind of like because they're so much further advanced in herpetoculture than we are usually
yeah,
over
yeah,
here for the
yeah.
most part. So it was kind of cool. That was like a win for USA. You know what I mean? Because
Right,
I know
yeah,
all those guys were trying just as hard as I was, and they weren't able to make it happen yet. But now I've shared that everyone I know who's keeping them over there, we've shared that information with and everything like that. So it's
yeah.
always about furthering the species in captivity. Gatekeeping is not cool. So I
Yeah,
try
I
and
mean, you gatekeep that information dies with you, and then guess what? That animal dies with you too, because we
exactly,
can't keep it now.
exactly.
No,
And that's
so
again to your first question. That's part of the legacy herps, right? To let their legacy live on. You know what I'm saying? Like if we
yeah,
don't share this information, I don't write articles or anything like that, but people reach out to me all the time and ask me all kinds of questions, and I'm an open book with all of them. So
yeah,
I would like to. That's one thing I want to do. I want to get more into writing articles and stuff like that. I've been approached by Bion with the Responsible Herpiculture Journal.
nice.
They've asked me to
Yeah,
write a couple different articles. I'm not really a writer, and I've got like a writer's
yeah.
block
It
thing I
definitely.
got to get
Yeah,
over.
I'm kind of going through that shit right now because like I said I work with Happy Dragons, and
Mhm.
so and my part in there is not even like they say care guide. I say it's a evolving blog for me because it's always going to change, like depending
Yeah.
on whatever happens. And because I'm like I said, I got these pterodactylists that people don't even work with really, so I'm trying to figure them out, and I'm always taking notes. So eventually, what I'm going to do is have this website go up and have all the information on there, and then when something changes, I'm gonna update it. And it's not gonna be this is your standard, this is how you're supposed to do it. No, I was like, no, this is what's been working. This is what happened on this day. This is what happened on this day, and I noticed this happened, so I'm making this change right here. is always going to be evolving for me with that stuff. So hopefully it works out. If it doesn't, oh well. I mean, if it does, I'm glad I can help somebody with it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So where can everybody find you at?
Same as always, on Facebook, Justin Munsterman, just under my name. I'll probably switch that over to Legacy Herps and do my own page at some point, you know what I mean, to streamline that. But mostly Instagram is where, most people that I'm not quite familiar with, or if you've never spoken to me before, never reached out to me before, Instagram is definitely the best way to do it. And it's at Legacy Herps. So
when are you going to do that YouTube, man?
I don't know, bro. as soon as I got, everything's always a work in progress. You feel like with this, like when you keep as many, animals, it's like you never have downtime, you know what I mean? So I feel like I'm always behind the gun, always trying to catch up. And there's something that needs to be revamped over here, tweaked over here, because I am a perfectionist in a lot of it. And I don't want to show off, my room or this or that until everything's perfect. You know what I mean? To my standards, at least. So it's,
that's understandable.
I'm sure to most people, a lot of people, close friends who come over, they're like, dude, this is crazy. This is better than going to the zoo and seeing the exhibits at the zoo. And I'm like, to me, it looks like a dump. I'm like, I'm not happy with this right now. I wouldn't have you here if you didn't knock on my door unexpectedly,
Right.
But,
yeah, trust me. I got people like, hey, man, come over, come kick it. I can check out the stuff. I'm like, dude, no, this ain't happening right now. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm taking part of a kitchen right now. I was like, no, this ain't happening. It's like, wait until I get my place, get everything set up the way I need to do. Then we can talk. It's like, I don't know. Right now I'm thinking about planning on making a video, doing like a YouTube video for the Cerdodactylus zebricus, because I'm going to redo, I got an enclosure here. So now I'm going to think about putting it together and doing that, but I don't know yet. It's like I said, I don't like being in front of a camera already. So doing that, it scares the shit out of me. So it is what it is. But other than that, dude, like I said, appreciate you coming on, man. Just hang on for a second after I close it out, and then I'll give you some other info.
Thanks for having me.
Everybody. Yeah, everybody have a great night, great day. Like, share, subscribe this. Let everybody know about it. We want to showcase all these people that are making these positive contributions in the hobby. So please like, share, subscribe. Peace.
Yeah, Jason on the mic. Welcome to the spot. Breeding those reptiles, straight fire, straight hot. Geckos in the house, snakes twist and turn. Lizards on the prowl, see the passion burn. Breeders in the game, they putting in work. Red tail bows, see them go berserk. Leopard geckos shine like scales of gold. Hobbyists unite, let them stories be told. Putting in that work every day and night. Jason got the spotlight, keeping it tight. Reptile keepers rise, making impact. Breeding them beauties, never looking back. Cages all set, heat lamps in place. Monitor lizards, putting on a chase. From the boa constrictors to the chameleons green. Building up the hobby, live the reptile dream. Corn snakes slither, python stretch. Crested geckos leap, ain't no contest. Spotlighting the keepers, doing it right. Every enclosure clean, every feeding tight. Putting in that work every day and night. Jason got the spotlight, keeping